Good morning and welcome. I will call this first meeting of the new Heritage Oakville Committee meeting to order. Welcome to the new members and the returning members. The new members, we have Jason Judson and Bob Loughlin. So if we could just start and just do a quick introduction with staff and the committee members. If staff want to go first.
Who are you, Kirk?
My name is Kirk Bigger. I'm the manager of policy planning and heritage. It's great to see everyone on this new term of committee, and welcome to returning members and our new members.
Hi, I'm Susan Schappert. I am one of the heritage planners on staff. Thanks.
And I am Carolyn Van Slichtenhorst from the other Heritage Planners, actually currently in a supervisor role for the Heritage Conservation Project.
Kirk, did you want to introduce your other Heritage staff and the director?
Absolutely. In the back of the room, we have our director, Gabe Charles, Director of Planning Services. And in the front, we have our two Heritage Planning researchers, Kristen McLaughlin and Elaine Eigel. And I think it's your first time visiting with us with Heritage Oakville, so welcome. And welcome back to Elaine.
Thank you. Jill Marcavacchio, Council Committee Coordinator. Councillors?
Councillor Kathy Deddick, Ward 2.
Councillor Gittings, Ward 3.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jason Judson. First time here, so hello. Yeah.
Jerry Tino.
You guys are boring. Carrie Colburn, proud owner of King's Castle, first property designated by Ontario.
Sue Hobson, returning member.
Drew Bucknell, returning member.
Russ Buckland, returning member.
Bob Loughlin, brand new member.
Thank you, committee, and welcome again. We will go out of order and deal with item 4.1 on the agenda, election of chair and vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair, or sorry, for chair for 2023? Thank you, George. Drew, do you accept that nomination?
I do.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Councillor Deddick.
I move that nomination cease.
So seeing no other nominations, nominations are closed. All those in favor of Drew Bucknell being nominated for chair for 2023. And also I should just note that with the chair having served for more than 2 consecutive terms, that is with the consensus of the committee then. All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Congratulations, Chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair for 2023?
I would like to nominate Jerry Tino, please.
Jerry, do you accept that nomination?
I do.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Councillor Deddick.
Madam Clerk, I move that nomination cease.
Seeing none and saying that Jerry will have served for more than 2 consecutive terms as vice chair. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Jerry, you accept that nomination? Yes. Okay. All right. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Congratulations, Chair and Vice Chair, and I will pass it over to the re-elected Chair, Drew Bucknell. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill, for opening the meeting and getting us through the arduous process of running an election. I'd like to welcome all of the returning members and to thank each of you for, despite being long-serving members, still being willing to assist with this. And I particularly welcome our two new members. And I know they will add a lot to the important work that this committee does for the town of Oakville and just for the special things that there are about Oakville. The challenge that we have is to preserve these special things and at the same time manage them as the circumstances around them change. So, good. I need to ask this, I'll ask her in a moment. I'll ask if anybody has any declarations of pecuniary interest. No, there are none. Are there any regrets, Madam Secretary?
Mr. Chair, I do not have any regrets. I have not heard from Brenda Sweeney.
Thank you. I would like to just remind anybody watching that if they want to get a copy of the agenda, they should go to oakville.ca, and it's a much improved website that we have now, and it should be a little bit more intuitive for you to find the agenda materials for this meeting today. We don't have any registered delegations for today, and we've got just 2 discussion items. I would like to remind everybody that we are an advisory committee, and any recommendations that we might choose to make will go to Planning and Development Council for its meeting on Monday, the 15th of May at 6:30 p.m. Okay, confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. These have been circulated. Are there any comments? Councillor Duddick?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the minutes. Any discussion on that motion? Anyone opposed to that motion? So the minutes are approved. Thank you. So we'll move on now to item 4.2, I think it is the Heritage Designation Project 2023 to 25. And it's Carolyn who's going to lead us through this.
Microphone. There we go. Thank you. And welcome to the new committee. So yeah, this is our only presentation today. So we've got just a small report on the Heritage Designation Project. So I'll take you through that. So why do we have this designation project? So currently there are 294 properties that are listed on the Heritage Register. These are properties that have potential cultural heritage value, but are not yet designated. Sometimes it's referred to as the watch list or even the job jar as the committee and staff we've worked on to say, you know, which of these properties have good potential to be designated, and we've worked on them over the years. But as you know, with staff resources and time, you know, there's only so many we can designate every year. So we still do have 294 properties that are listed. Not all of them are necessarily properties that are going to be designated. There are some that are on there for salvage opportunities, for some, you know, lake stone material that's still left there, but maybe the rest of the building is gone. But some we've always prioritized. We know our properties we want to designate. So some we've done proactively and some we've done reactively as part of development applications. So what we've had to do is look at that list because of changes from the province through Bill 23, which created some amendments to the Ontario Heritage Act. And these came into effect January 1st this past year, 2023. And there are 2 amendments that have brought about this designation project, and those are related to listed properties. So essentially, it's a 2-year time limit that we have to impose now for listed properties, and this comes about in 2 ways. So for listed properties that are newly added to the register, they must be removed from the register 2 years after that date that they're added. Secondly, any existing listed properties, including the 294, they must be removed from the register by January 1st, 2025, because that's the 2-year timeline after the new legislation came into effect. So looking at this, of course, we want to make sure we're protecting our heritage resources. So we're going through this whole project to try to designate as many properties we can in the next 2 years to ensure that we've got them protected, because once they come off the Heritage Register, it makes it a little bit more difficult in some instances to protect the properties. So how we started it, the process was initiated in very early 2023. A lot of the background work was at the end of 2022. And in early 2023, we were able to hire 2 additional heritage planners for 2 years. That's Elaine and Kristen, who are here today. So their project that they're working on right now, that I'm supervising this year and Sue will be supervising next year, is to complete hopefully up to 80 shares, we call them. They're cultural heritage evaluation reports, similar to HIAs you've seen in the past or other staff research reports. So these are documents that really investigate what the cultural heritage value is of a property to determine if it's worthy of designation. So our goal is to complete 80 in this year and next year prior to January 2025. And we were able to start this by assessing the existing listed properties and finding about 100 or so that have very strong potential for designation. And how we did this is we evaluated all of the listed properties using Ontario Regulation 906. So that's looking at design, physical, historical, associative, and contextual value. Obviously, we weren't able to go into an in-depth process for each of them like we would in a share, but we were able to do this kind of in a quicker process and a general process by looking at, for example, a design physical value, just looking at the building, driving by, walking by, looking at pictures. Does the building have a lot of its original features, and is it representative of a certain architectural style? Those are things we could fairly easily, clearly see that were there, even if we need to do a little bit more digging and research. It's pretty evident just by looking at it. Secondly, for historical and associative value, a lot of properties, committee members know, residents know, staff know. There are some that we already know a lot of information about. There's something significant that happened there, had a significant use or family associated with it. So for those, we looked in our own files and notes just to see, and we flagged those that we already knew had that historical value. And then finally, contextual value, similar to design and physical. This is just by looking at it in the streetscape, knowing the context, is it a landmark within the community? You can pretty clearly see off the bat if it has contextual value. So looking at that, again, in a more sort of general view, we were able to evaluate the properties to see, which ones had the really, really strong potential for designation. And we came up with about 100. And obviously, it's a little bit more than our 80, but it doesn't mean that we can't designate more after January 1st, 2025. However, the Ontario Heritage Act, one of the other amendments is that a property that is subject to a development application must be listed before it's designated. So any regular property, say a detached home that isn't subject to any kind of development planning application, it could be designated in the future. It could go from no heritage status after January 1st, 2025 to designated, that's fine. But any property that is going to be subject to any kind of development application, official planning amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, those have to be listed first. So those are ones we are prioritizing within the next year and a half to almost 2 years, because we want to make sure those are designated before they're removed from the register. So this is just a bit how we're able to do it. Again, this is supported through the Ontario Heritage Act in terms of these amendments, and obviously the designation process is still supported and remains generally the same with some tweaks from Bill 23. And otherwise, provincially, we have the Planning Act, the Provincial Policy Statement, the Growth Plan, those all support the conservation of heritage resources, as well as coming down to the region of Halton, their official plan does as well. And then on our local level, we have the Livable Oakville Plan and the North Oakville East and West secondary plans, as well as some additional heritage policies. So that's just always been the case. Those are policies that have always been in place that have been able to support our heritage designation program. We're just doing it on a faster speed right now. We looked at best practices. We've got quite a nice tight-knit community of heritage planners across Ontario, so we've been in regular communication with them, seeing what they're doing in their municipalities. And I would say across the board for larger municipalities, more urban centers, they're taking the same approach as us, so hiring additional staff, getting those research reports done, and trying to designate as quickly as possible. So it's been found to be the most efficient, economical approach. And I will say that I think we are probably at the earliest stages. We're sort of ahead of the game for most municipalities. A lot of them are still looking to hire that staff, whereas we're already quite far into the process. So this wasn't in the report, but it's just a little bit of an update on the program so far. So we have ongoing contact with property owners, sending out new letters, talking to property owners we already know about designation. We are trying as best as possible to have a positive, proactive designations with property owners. Obviously, there is an appeal process for designation, and any of these could be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. We're trying to avoid that at any cost because it's just a more helpful way to get through it when everyone's on board, and obviously to save taxpayers money and staff the process of going through a hearing over it. We'd rather kind of lay out any possible issues from the get-go. So a lot of this, I think, will be working with homeowners to get that designation in a positive way. So that includes some site visits that are underway of properties to make sure we have a good understanding of the building and have good photos of the building or property, just to make sure we're covering all of those heritage attributes that we're going to be putting in the designation bylaw. And so far we have approximately 10 shares that have been drafted, so those will be coming to you in the coming months. And 2 other new things coming soon. We are updating, creating, a new designation info sheets for property owners. So this is just a little bit of an overview to say, what does it mean to be designated? What are the positive aspects? So things like our Heritage Grant Program that you can take advantage of if your property is designated. Also, trying to outline some of the myths about heritage designation. There's always a lot of misinformation going around there, so we're trying to get ahead of the game too by just calling some of those out and giving more detailed explanations. And then finally, this is something else you'll be seeing at the next Heritage Committee meeting, is alternative notice requirements. So the Heritage Act requires that notices related to anything in the Heritage Act, such as designations, go to the local newspaper. But this is always what we've done in the past. It can be quite costly. When we have a couple designations here and there, it's not as big of a deal. But when you have 80 going in, it's a lot of money. So the Municipal Act allows us to do other alternative notices through our website. So that is our plan. We still will be doing a little bit of notices in the Beaver, but most of the information will be on the town website, which is the way most municipalities have gone, especially the larger, more urban municipalities, and others are doing the same as us as part of this project, realizing, of course, if you're bringing through 80 or 100 designations, it's going to be quite costly. So the staff recommendation is just that the report be received. The recommendation, the staff report is updated from clerks since the staff report, so it's just a bit longer. It's that the report, Heritage Designation Project 2023 to 2025, dated April 11th, 2023, from the Planning Services Department, be received. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carolyn. I go back far enough. I remember Michael Seaman, who was our first manager of heritage planning, and he hired our 2 wonderful heritage planners, I remember. But while he was doing that, he had a look around the town and saw there were so many buildings that were not yet designated that perhaps ought to be. So that list was populated by council, and I think it was 200 or 300 went onto it sort of all at one go about that time. And those of us on the committee at that time looked on that as, okay, that's our job jar, because these are houses that we must start to look at to see whether Part 4 is appropriate. And we started out with that, and that used to be in our work plan that we would designate 3, 4, 5, however many a year. Well, as Harold Macmillan, former British Prime Minister, once responded when asked, why didn't you do the things you said you were going to do? He replied, events, dear boy, events. And that's what happened to us. Just so many other events took place, not least of which was Glen Abbey, that kind of knocked the work plan off course. If I would give a tick to the provincial government, this is actually saying to us, hey guys, you've really got to get this done. You can't leave people hanging here for decades wondering if their house is going to be designated at some stage. So from that point of view, this is good work, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for you in the staff, and it'll be a certain amount of work for us too. Kathy, you wanted to comment?
Yes, just wanted through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. You had mentioned that you're going to put something in the Beaver and the majority of the notifications, and that will be on our website. So just to understand, you'll have something directing them to the website to gain additional information. Is that correct?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Duddick. All of this will come in a report next month to the Heritage Committee with more details, but that is our thought right now, is to put the bulk of the information on the website, because from a legal perspective, we want to include all of the notice with all of the heritage attributes, everything you're going to see essentially in the designation bylaw in the notice, to keep it consistent throughout that whole process. But that's a lot of information, a lot of details. They can take up half page to a whole page to a page and a half. So we're talking, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars per month. So the idea was to think, could we do something, a small blurb to direct people, hey, there are numerous heritage designations that the town has moved, council has initiated, so please go to this website at the town. So that's the idea, yeah.
Okay, and that sheet that you referenced in terms of dealing with myths and giving more information to these people who obviously have received a preliminary letter, it would deal, I would imagine, with things where people have the idea that we deal with the interior versus the exterior. And I've already seen on social media a couple of posts where people have in error assumed that, this means I can't have my kitchen, I can't have this, whatever, So that's good. And I must say, sort of building on what the chair had referenced, at first I was very sort of cynical of the whole process, that they were moving it so quickly. But in retrospect, the only way we sometimes dealt with this long list is if somebody initiated a demolition request, which meant we were on a very tight time frame in order for you to provide us the research to make a decision. So in retrospect, I think it's good because we'll have this done and we won't have those, somebody at the last minute wants to demolish, but they don't really want to demolish. They just want to have their decision being made. So thank you, and thank you very much for being so what shall I say, forward thinking and hiring the additional staff. Thanks.
Okay. Carrie?
Mr. Chair. Carolyn, I was just curious, you said that...
Get your mic on, Carrie.
Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Carolyn, I was just curious, you said that you've already started contacting property owners. I was just curious what kind of feedback, if any, that you've been receiving.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Carrie, we're getting actually quite some positive feedback from some. I think the grant program is the biggest thing that people are interested in. They want to be able to take advantage of it, and so that's been a really positive thing. So I think the other feedback I will have so far is, things like Councillor Duddick was referring to. I've heard a lot of things, but I would like to hear it from you. So that's what we have, upcoming meetings and site visits on to talk about those things, because I think a lot of people do have concerns, but they also realize they don't actually know the answers. They've just heard things. But we have had some positive feedback where people are saying, yes, I would love to take part of the grant program. So hopefully that continues.
Good. Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Great presentation. Further to Councillor Duddick's comments, would it be possible to get a copy of that? As Councillor Duddick mentioned, there are a fair amount of activity on social media, and it would be nice if we had that information. We could share it with our council colleagues for when people reach out to us, just to lower the temperature a little bit, provide them some information, provide them some contact details, and include the Heritage Grant Program, just so that we can help them through the process and just lower the temperature a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. And through the chair of the rest of the committee, if you do have ideas in terms of, miss to bust sort of thing, please send them to us, absolutely. We have another email set up, heritage@oakville.ca, that's just sort of a standard email where we can have inquiries come to, so we'll be sharing that email to people in that info sheet. But absolutely, we'll make it, we'll either send it to the committee or maybe even put it on the agenda next month, depending. But whatever it is, we'll get out the PDFs. You can actually share that to people as well. Yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Anyone else? Bob?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The need to publicise things and so on, this is presumably not for the owners. You're going to be contacting them directly. This is for neighbours and other interested folks.
Correct, through the chair. So we will still require all of our letters, so they'd be actually sent to the owners and to the Ontario Heritage Trust, the provincial body who deals with the bylaws and designation bylaws and notices. So those two things will still occur, letters in the mail going to the owners and going to the Ontario Heritage Trust. This is just notice for the general public is changing. Correct.
All right, Bob? Good. Jerry, and then George.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just wanted to echo everyone's comments that the presentation was a very good one, and it's nice to see that we're going to have a robust inventory in the future moving forward. I wanted to ask if there was an opportunity in the department, or whether in the Heritage Department or in another department in the Town Hall, where there would be ongoing communication with the federal and the provincial government, something from ground up that would relate to heritage preservation in the future, something that we can maybe influence policy changes in the future or have a say. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Jerry, even as recent as this week, other heritage planners, other municipalities have been talking about putting some things together to the province to say, even to respond to some of the things, to say, this is maybe not what you intended, this is what's happening, just to let them know sort of on the ground, this is how those changes are being implemented. So I think there is an ongoing conversation that way. Otherwise, I would say it's also an opportunity for residents and constituents to reach out to their local MPs and MPPs as well.
Thank you.
George? Kathy?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to add to already an overwhelming workload, but would there be a possibility, and maybe something in that sheet that you're referencing, sending out, that you could maybe share some of the successes that we've had in terms of people who maybe had originally opposed something and staff worked with them and the result was this, or even the awards that the town heritage staff have received in regards to the work that they've completed, just to give them a broader overview of, they may sort of feel like deer in the headlights at the first, but to give them an idea how fulsome the staff have worked in regards to things. So just add that.
It's interesting that you say that. We were having a discussion with the team just yesterday about this, sharing quotes, from like giving testimonials. I think as part of the designation info sheet, it's going to be a bit more factual, so I don't think we'll be including that. But we have done that through the newsletter in the past, and I will say the newsletter this year didn't get done because Bill 108, Bill 23, it was chaos. But maybe there's a chance for sort of even a mini newsletter or something that's a bit smaller that can go on the website, be available. Maybe it's a bit of a separate thing. So I think our team is happy to hear support because they like that idea as well. So we'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
Carrie?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in that same vein, I'd have to say the first time that, well, actually, I guess the only time that we ever had to come to the Heritage Advisory Committee, to say that I was terrified is probably too strong of a word, but I think there's something to say to people that, the process is not onerous, that we're here to help, that you guys are awesome to work with, just to ease homeowners, that it isn't this terrifying, laborious, expensive process, and that really we're here to help, which may sound self-serving coming from us, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning to homeowners.
Thanks for that.
Yes, thanks, Gary. I think that's important to get people's fear of the process blunted a little. And I think all of us would be prepared to help with that based on our experience even. Because many of us here have had experience of requiring Heritage to approve something we wanted to do to our own homes. Good, super. Any other comments from anyone? this is a great project, and as I said, it's going to be a lot of work for everybody as it progresses. Can I have a motion to recommend that the report be received? Kerry? So Kerry has moved that report be received, so we have a motion. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Is there anyone opposed to that motion? No, the report is received. Thank you very much. Right, so moving quickly right along, it's information items. The list of the heritage permits that were delegated to staff has been circulated. And as usual, if you have any questions about anything on that, please talk to staff after the meeting. And we have a standing information item, which is an update on the Heritage Conservation District process. And it's Sue that's going to maybe talk about that, maybe about the public meeting that we had, which was good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm pleased to be back in front of the committee. I haven't seen some of you for a little while. So the first draft of the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District update, the first draft of the study is now available on the town's website. It was posted April 3rd, and on April 18th, we had a public information meeting that was well attended by over 30 interested residents, stakeholders in the area who came to hear a presentation about the contents of the draft study and to provide some of their preliminary feedback to us, which was very welcome. I think it was a great meeting. It was excellent to hear feedback. We do need all types of comments, questions, and feedback to refine this document. To that end, we currently have a survey that's live on and linked from the town's website with fairly open-ended questions about what your thoughts are on the draft study. You're not required to use the survey in order to respond to us. If you'd just like to send in an email or even, ask for a chat with Heritage Planning staff to share your comments or feedback about the draft study, we are more than happy to do or listen to any of those things. So there are a number of different ways that you can communicate with us. We've been trying to share that message through the town's website, as well as an email blast to people who have signed up to receive updates about the project. And we're looking at closing comments on the draft study sometime around mid to late May. And hopefully we'll have a draft for the Heritage Committee to look at sometime, hopefully later this summer. So once we receive those comments, we'll be working with our consulting team to make revisions to that document to then bring back something that's a more refined product. So I'm happy to chat with anybody after the meeting if you have any questions about that process or how to be involved, but I strongly encourage you to take a look at the draft survey, the draft study that's online. Heritage Oakville, of course, will be given a formal opportunity to comment, but anything that you'd like to share with us in advance would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I did attend the meeting, and it was a good meeting, and I shared with you afterwards some comments that I had on the block versus area in the context of the cultural heritage landscape. And I'm sure staff would love to hear from you, especially if you have people talking to you and they've got ideas and you could communicate that too, because communication is really important at this stage. Okay, so the information items have been given. Can I have a motion to receive the information items? I think Bob would like to do that to get his name in the minutes. Bob, you're going to move that the information items be received. Is there any discussion on that motion? Anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Thank you. The date and time of our next meeting, it'll be here again on Tuesday, May the 30th at 9:30. So it'll be the beginning of a busy year. I'm sure there'll be more applications beginning to flow in as we go ahead, and the Heritage Grant Program too will be starting to build up ahead of steam, and we'll have to deal with that sometime in the next couple of meetings. So we've got a lot to do, a lot on our plate to deal with. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Perhaps Jason would like to make that motion. Thank you, Jason. No one opposed to that. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for the gift of your time again today.
see a lot of really great applications